The Total Screen proudly presents the Weekly Set Podcast with Tyson Gifford and William Rohrig. Episode 212, recorded June 29th, 2019. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Weekly Set, the official podcast of the Total Screen. I am your host. My name is Tyson, and joining me today, as always, is my partner in crime here at the Total Screen, William Rohrig.
Hello.
So today we are going to be talking about two shows. We're going to be talking about the 5th season of Black Mirror, all 3 episodes, and we are also going to be talking about the season premiere of Legion. That's season 3, episode 1. So we're going to go through each Black Mirror episode in the order, the official episode order, and then we're going to do the Legion premiere.
Okay.
Let's start with Black Mirror. Striking Vipers is the first episode. To get it just out of the way up front, this is directed by Owen Harris, who also directed the Black Mirror episodes Be Right Back and San Junipero.
Okay.
The episode was written by Charlie Brooker, who wrote all of these episodes.
And my guess is this was trying to be the San Junipero for the season, but it's horrible, so no.
See, I didn't have the issue with it.
Whereas San Junipero had an actual point and had a profound message, this had no point and was like a one-note joke for the entire episode.
I don't know, I think I got something else out of it, which is what I got was the idea that, and it was showing something without necessarily, I agree on the whole, not having a point thing, not necessarily with that negative connotation, but just in the sense that, there isn't a clear message, but I think that there's something else there, which is it's kind of showing a possible future that could be through something like what I've always heard of described as full dive VR, which that's how they talk about it in sci-fi and anime and stuff, which is the idea of not a visor that you're looking through, but a sensor that's directly interfaces with your brain. It's
like they took that stupid meme with the kid with the VR helmet and he says goodbye real world because he's going to have lots of VR sex. And they said, yeah, that meme, we can make that an hour drama.
But long before that meme, that was the way that sci-fi envisioned the eventual endpoint of VR.
Right.
Was that you would jack in. It's the Matrix, basically.
It's a Matrix.
You jack into the Matrix and you're now in this world and your body's just limp. Laying there and your brain, everything that your brain normally interacts with, the way it uses your eyes to see, instead this computer is interfacing what you see. Instead of using your nerves to feel, it's the computer's interfacing with your brain to tell you what it's feeling.
Which in reality is silly and cartoonish because somebody has to program the Matrix, and good God, what a feat that would be.
Artificial intelligence and machine learning, my friend.
Yeah, I don't think so, but also the way it's presented, they're clearly it's a fighting game, and they're oh, you feel all why would you feel all sensations in a fighting game? That's stupid.
Because just like it would take over for your visual nerves, it's also taking over for your nerve endings.
Why would anybody want to physically feel getting the shit beat out of them? I don't know.
But you put it to a less, you would desensitize it and it would make it a real experience. Right. That's the idea, is that you make it real, but you don't make it 100% real. It's magic real.
Right. Yeah, it is. It's magic. But, but the whole conceit of the story is these two dude bros, they just use the technology to fuck each other constantly. And that's the entire episode. It creates some drama because they're oh, am I gay now? And oh no, my wife is mad I won't touch her, in relationship drama. And then, but it doesn't really go anywhere but that. There's some minor conflict. It's settled in
See, that's where I said, I don't think that there's necessarily a clear-cut message, but
right.
I do think that there's something there. It's showing a possible future and it's showing it in a different way. And it's not necessarily saying oh, and this is the ramification of that. It's more just showing it. Without a message attached.
I think you're just too distracted by how cool the technology looks. You're I want that.
The thing is, I know, for example, when I was talking to my sister about this, she was complaining that the whole idea that they would be emotionally in love with each other was not portrayed at all. It's just kind of oh, so they're in a game, so suddenly they are in love with each other somehow, or physically they're attracted to their avatars, but somehow there's more behind it. And her complaint was that comes from the moment the one guy that's Carl, who's in the body of Roxette in the game, is saying that he's tried it with other people and it wasn't the same. And she's like, why wouldn't it be the same if it's just a physical thing for this avatar and there's no like emotional connection because he wasn't gay?
Yeah, but
that's not true.
That's another problem with the thing because they hint at, okay, well, maybe they're gay for each other, but then they like debunk that with that scene where they kiss in real life.
Okay, so two things I can get on that. One is that the idea that this was something that came about only in the game, I think is incorrect. I think that they implied that at least Carl had feelings for Danny before, because they showed in the scene where you see like before Danny got married and moved out, when they lived in like the apartment together and played, they would like roughhouse, and there was a part where like Carl was like on top of Danny, and it was getting like just to the edge of being weird, and he kind of pulled back suddenly and stuff. Like that was, to me, that was directly implying, and I tried to say this to my sister, and she wasn't agreeing with me at first, but I think she kind of saw my point later on, is like, I think Carl is trans. I think, and it's not trans because of the game. I think he was before, but he's one of those trans people that can't like be what he envisions himself as. He's like, he's too big. He's too masculine. Right. So he can't be the ideal him that he wants to be. So instead he overcompensates by trying to be like the really cool bachelor and have that like lifestyle. But he doesn't have commitment.
That's why he picks the female avatar when he plays?
Yes. I think that that's part of it. I don't think that's necessarily implying everybody who plays fighting games and picks a female avatar is trans. I'm not saying that at all. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that I think that's the case for him, and I think that goes to his behavior. If you look at like his lifestyle, he lives alone. Like his dating situation never works out. He's always by himself.
It's a great inference, and your arguments make a lot of sense, but the episode never states that. So
I think, but I don't think that that's. I think that you can read into it, and I don't think that that's saying that it's not that they did do the legwork. I think they did do the legwork. I just don't think that they said it straight out. Like they didn't say like, I always feel alone by myself sitting in here. When I roughhouse with you, I feel a little turned on, but I'm trying to hide that. Like that's unnatural writing. I think they left all the clues.
But then they had that scene at the end where like they were like, oh yeah, definitely not gay.
Well, that's what they said.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that that's what's true. I mean, that happens all the time. Like just because a character says something doesn't mean that's the truth.
Right.
Of the situation. And in fact, I think it was almost the other way around. I think it was that Carl didn't get what he wanted out of that kiss with Danny, and he's the one that I say is like more trans, and he didn't get out of it because he was a man when he was having that kiss. So he didn't have, that was crucial to him is being a female. And so he didn't get something out of it. I think Danny, on the other hand, did get something out of it, but held back on his answer. And I read that off of their facial expressions. Like, so I'm not saying that they didn't give any clue to it and I'm just making it all up or something. I'm saying that I inferred that from their acting. Like the way they presented their acting told me that. So that's where I disagree. Like I think that there was a lot that was subtle in this episode.
Maybe I still hated it. I was like, oh, this is horrible. I was like, oh god.
But come on, you'd want to get that game just so you could like fuck randoms without STD concerns.
Oh, yeah. I'd be all over that, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, see, that's the thing though. Consider it from the way I said it though. The idea, consider that story from the perspective that Carl is and has always been trans. Not that the game made him trans or that it awakened that, but that he always was, that it's just something that he wasn't able to like live out before until this.
Right.
Then like a lot of the kind of like it takes on a different meaning if you think about it that way.
I would have to say that for the initial encounter, for what Carl did the first time in the game, there had to have been something there already for Carl to even do that.
He was pushing hard for them to play that game together.
He was. And he was the one who knew what the game was about before the other guy.
Yeah. So to me, that's what the story was about. Like, if you had to say there was a point, I'd say the point is related to like a current issue, which is the idea of like gender and being what you want to be and who you want to be, and how something like this could make that fully possible, like immediately fully possible. I mean, not like in the real world, but I mean, if you feel the sensations, then what does it matter if it's the real world or not?
Yeah, what does it matter? If the virtual world is indistinguishable from the real world, then what does it matter? You can escape to the the virtual world and be whatever you want to be.
I'll tell you one thing. I would eat all of my meals in the virtual world. I would just set up an IV that just gave me all the nutrients I needed. And then in the virtual world, I'd be eating like the craziest, most unhealthy, delicious foods there are.
Sure. That would be as satisfying to me as like actually eating for real. But
well, you don't know because it's your brain is picking up on the same exact neural sensors, you know?
Right.
It's like eating in the Matrix. It's like there was that scene in the Matrix where the one guy, the guy that betrayed everybody, was in the restaurant with the agent and he was like chowing down on the food or something, and he did a whole monologue about how, you know, ignorance is bliss. That like he knows what he's eating isn't real, but like it's real to him in that moment. Like he tastes it, he's experiencing it, you know?
Right, exactly.
So think about the health benefits. You could like eat whatever you want and just have like an IV hooked up that's just giving you the exact nutrients you need. The flavorless, most loathful food that nobody wants to eat. You're getting injected into you. It's the healthiest way to live. And then your experience is eating the most delicious cuisine.
You know what's wrong with being jacked into virtual reality all the time?
You miss what's going on outside the window.
No, you're not getting any exercise. Your body's not getting any exercise. So
you just have machines do that too. Just move your arms around.
So your body's gonna wither away.
You just do it like the Bruce Lee style where he had those like electrodes that he would put on his like chest and stuff, and they would shock his muscles and cause them to contract.
You got this all figured out.
So you just do that, you know? You have a physical therapist visit you while you're in there and they're like stretching out your legs and stuff. There's a book series that I read like a long time ago. It was like a YA series called like Pendragon, and it had all these different realities, and one of them was a future where everybody was jacked into this kind of like a VR experience because it was better than the real world. But the downside was that, like you said, like who takes care of your body and stuff. So there were people that were working, their jobs would be to like take care of people, and then they would go and jack them themselves when they were done with their jobs. So they would go and they would like, you know, massage people's legs and do that kind of stuff. Like that, a lot of them, like most of the people in this world did this. And then they would jack in for their own time to do that, to do all their own stuff. But after a certain point, they just started neglecting their jobs. And so people would die because they just didn't care anymore. They just wanted to be like jacked in. So they just started neglecting, and people would die off and stuff like that. And it just wasn't, you know, they wouldn't notice because it was, so that's like the bigger danger, I think, is that we get so dependent on it that, you know, like the people that are supposed to be your caretakers are supposed to enable you to do it.
It's interesting.
Stop doing their job. Yeah,
that reminds me. There's like this one passage in the Last Hitchhiker's book and another thing, which like there was this alien race where like their world was like so terrible that they jacked into a virtual reality world, you know, but because like there had to be like a fuel source that they had to harvest, you know, to keep everything like running. So some people had to stay behind in the real world and do the upkeep. And then they said like they would take turns, you know, like so they would hop in and then a certain other group would come out and do the upkeep. And they said at one point the group that had to do the upkeep were completely unreliable, stole all the planet's resources, and took off and left everybody to die.
Yeah. Exactly. That's the bigger issue, I think. But but I don't think it would ever get like that. I think there's too many different types of people. There's people that would be like, you know, no man, hiking Everest is really only if you risk in death, and you know what I mean? Like there's that type of person, and there's quite a few of them that would stay jacked out, not to necessarily enable the people that are jacked in, because I doubt they'd have that job, but they'd be reliable enough to go like, wait a minute, nobody's taken care of, better wake all these people up, you know?
Right.
I don't think like the full dystopian, like end of the world kind of stuff you get in sci-fi is ever very believable.
Right.
Just because there's always like, okay, now there's always like contingencies where it's not going to be a complete, like it could be a disaster, but it won't be like the end of mankind, you know? It could be many, many deaths, but it wouldn't be the end of the species, you know? But yeah, I mean, so you really didn't like the episode. That's the main point.
Yeah.
I did. It's not one of my favorite episodes of Black Mirror. To me, it'd be like a mid-tier episode.
Okay.
But I got a different perspective on it. Like that's the thing, you know, like I completely saw this as a trans story. That's like the way I experienced this story.
I didn't, yeah, like you were telling me, like maybe I wasn't thinking about that. Like, I guess like, if that was the intent, you know, they were like really subtle about it. Like, or either that or I'm just like that dense that it's like, okay, because I don't.
My sister didn't get it either, so it's not like, I think maybe it's something that I picked up on.
I
maybe
guess
by chance.
I didn't see Carl picking the female avatar as being entirely meaningful, other than like to facilitate the conceit of the episode.
I think that's just because we're too used to fighting games, and there's lots of people that use female fighters, and that doesn't necessarily mean anything.
Right, exactly. It's like,
so I think the case that we understand that might work against us. You know what I mean? Like, we're so used to it that like it doesn't strike us as weird or like, why would they pick that or something? And I think that could be a mistake. If I'm correct and that was intentional to have that be part of like a trans story, then perhaps it was a mistake of Charlie Brooker's to like rely on that to convey that message, when anybody that would understand the whole gaming mechanics anyways is so used to picking different genders and stuff in games that it's not something that they would even pay attention to.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like, that's just the way I was able to experience it. One last thing I want to point out, just kind of almost as a joke, is that Carl, the guy that I'm saying is trans, would go into the body of Roxette, the female fighting game character. Carl's like last major role was as Aquaman in Aquaman, where he played Black Manta.
Roxette was in Guardians of the Galaxy as Mantis.
Yes.
Yep, I picked that up. And Anthony Mackie is Captain America. Whoops, spoilers.
Also, Carl and Lance, the alter ego of Danny, were in the same movie Aquaman together, so they didn't necessarily have a lovey-dovey relationship in that, though. So, but that's it. That's for Striking Vipers. Let's move on to Smithereens. This was your favorite episode of the season.
This was just a fantastically written drama, and it does break the mold, because it does break the mold for Black Mirror in a sense that it's not about any future technology.
Yeah, it's not really sci-fi.
It's not sci-fi. It's not. This Black Mirror typically is hypothetical. This is not hypothetical. This is about something that has happened to people already.
It's hypothetical in the way an episode of CSI is hypothetical.
Yeah, exactly. It's hypothetical.
The exact conditions are hypothetical.
I thought it was fantastic because it's not exploring. It's because the conceit of Black Mirror is the negative effects technology can have on society, on our lives. You know, like that was the initial conceit. You know, the dark side of technology, and up until now, it's been presented as sort of a fantasy, you know, like science fiction. You know,
it shows a new technology, and then it says what could the ramifications of that be?
Yeah, this is what are the ramifications of our current technology, and what are the current ramifications? And it really takes a huge dig at social media in particular.
Yeah.
You know,
it also shows a pretty scary side of ride-sharing apps.
It does,
a vulnerability of ride-sharing apps.
Vulnerability of exactly. And I thought it was great because at first I really thought it was gonna be like some stupid like thing where like he kidnaps this guy and then he's constantly like avoiding the authorities, and there's all these contrived reasons for why he's not getting caught. That doesn't happen, thankfully. What you get is he gets caught, he gets found out pretty damn quick, and the rest of the episode is basically like a standoff. And the way it's done is just incredible. It comes down to the performances. The main character, the kidnapper, he is played by this actor who played Moriarty in the BBC version of Sherlock.
Andrew Scott is the actor.
Yeah, Andrew Scott. And that's why because when I watched it, I was like, I know that guy from somewhere. That guy was in something. I recognize him, and I had to Google it, and I found out that, yeah, he was Moriarty in Sherlock, and that's where I recognize him from. But
very different role.
very different role. But he is just fantastic. It's a simple episode, so I should point out. So it's about this guy. He hijacked a ride-sharing account. Some guy's ride-sharing account. He hijacked the account and his vehicle, and he's hanging out in front of the building of this company, Smithereens. Smithereens is an app similar to Twitter. You know, it's exactly Twitter. Like, they show screenshots of it, and it's Twitter.
I thought they were making more of a comparison to Facebook, though.
I thought they were, but as far as the structure, yeah, but then the
structure of the company and the CEO and all that stuff.
But then, like, on his phone, phone, he's looking at Twitter. He opens the Smithereen apps and opens to like this app that looks exactly like Twitter. And it's also revealed that that universe has its own Facebook analog, which is an app called Persona. Because when they show him, the first thing he does, he picks up this woman from the Smithereens, and the first thing he asks her is, "Oh, do you work there at Smithereens?" And she just says, "No, I wish. They got some cool stuff." And then he kind of just takes her to where she's going, and then it shows him, he's at like this self-help meeting.
So the initial thing is that it's Google because they have cool things.
Yes.
for the employees.
Yeah, they have cool things for the employees. So he's at the self-help, so immediately, he has like some kind of issues, and there's this woman talking, and she talks about her daughter that committed suicide, and she doesn't know why her daughter committed suicide. She ends up catching up with him after meeting. She hits on him, and they go back to her place and they have sex. And then that's when she reveals to him that she's been trying to log into her daughter's Persona account to see.
I forgot about that. That's the woman at the end. I forgot about that.
Yeah. Oh, okay. You forgot about that. Yeah. That's the woman at the end. That's where that comes in. She says she's trying to get into her daughter's Persona account to see what she was posting, see if she could find out why she wanted to kill herself. And she can't get in because she can't figure it. She's writing down, she's got like a notebook full of ideas for passwords, and every single one of them is wrong. And so that I took to be the Facebook analog. The Persona app is Facebook, and Smithereens is Twitter. But Smithereens is important to this. So he ends up picking up this guy, and he asks him, saying, do you work there? And he says, yeah. All the while he's like on his phone. He's not really paying attention to anything going on. Then he decides to kidnap him. He drives him to his parked car. And basically, he has him get out and get into the other car. He finds out that this guy is just an intern, so he's not really anybody important at the company. And he's pissed off because he was trying to get somebody important. Because his ultimate goal is he's trying to get in touch with the CEO of Smithereens.
Billy Bauer.
Billy Bauer.
Played by,
Topher Grace.
Best known, of course, for playing Venom in Spider-Man 3.
Oh, yes, best known. He never had any other roles.
Not on the TV show about a certain decade at all. Not at all.
No, not at all. Nothing.
He was Spider-Man 3 Venom. That's it. The only notable thing in his career.
That's his ultimate goal. And basically he decides, even though that this guy is an intern, he's still somebody who works at the company. He can work with them. So he kidnaps him, and he tries to put him in the trunk, but he puts up such a fight about it that eventually he relents and lets him in the back seat as long as he keeps his head down. And this is the first thing because I think what happens is they stop at this gas station, and then he drives off after refilling the car, and there's these two cops at the gas station as well, and as they're driving off, the one cop notices the guy in the back seat with the cover over his head. And she says, "Oh, well, that's odd." And then they start following them. And instead of playing it cool, because the guy's like laying down in the back, they couldn't see him after he laid back down. So they didn't, and the one cop wasn't really sure what she saw in the first place. So he could have just played it cool and got them to go away. But as soon as he sees the cops on his tail, he books it. So he's booking it, and then that's when they know that they really know something's wrong. So they're chasing him. He gets run off into a field, and then his car comes to a stop, and they get out. They start chasing after him. He pulls out a gun, starts waving it around, and this begins a huge standoff. And then this is where the bulk of the episode takes place, because now they're in a standoff. They're calling for backup. Increasingly number of police are getting involved. News people are getting involved. There's these two bystanders, these two kids who are hanging around, just seeing what's going on. And basically, he's holding this intern hostage, and he's making demands that he wants to speak to Billy Bauer. And basically, eventually, and through this intern, he gets a hold of people at the company, Smithereens, up to the COO. And then the FBI gets involved, and then the COO and people at the company are getting involved. They manage to tap into a feed of what he's saying in the car. And eventually they reach Billy Bauer, and after much drama and argument, to make this summary brief, he gets a hold of Billy Bauer. Billy Bauer gets on the phone, and that's when this guy lays it out. His entire reason for doing what he did, for needing to get in touch with Billy Bauer, is because he had a fiancée. They were happy, and what had happened was he was driving with her in the car one night, and he was driving down a stretch of quiet road, and he describes it as it was so boring. His phone went off. There was an alert from the app, the Smithereens app, and he looked at the alert. Somebody liked one of his pictures, and that second that he looked away, an incoming car came up, and he ran right into him, and it ended up killing his fiance
and the other driver.
He apparently came out of it unscathed, physically unscathed, not mentally or emotionally. He got fucked up in that.
I'll interject here that the one thing I thought was really interesting in this moment is that they didn't make it that it was caused by his distraction. They made it questionable.
Right.
Because the other guy was blamed for it because he was drunk. He was in fact drunk. That wasn't inaccurate. So it was an issue of like, maybe if he wasn't distracted, the accident wouldn't have happened. Maybe it would have still happened. Like and they specifically make that clear that it's not a direct cause and effect. It's not a direct result. Like he doesn't know, but he blames himself regardless, because even if it wouldn't have been his fault, the fact that he looked away, that he was distracted, meant that he valued, a relief from boredom while driving over the life of him, of his own, of the other driver, anybody else on the road, and his wife. Right.
So yeah, he blames himself. And basically, he blames himself, and he's angry at the app at the same time. Like he says, he's angry at the app, but at the same time, he even says, like, he knows it's his fault. That's what
he doesn't want to torture or get revenge on the person. He just wants to unload.
Yeah, he just wants to unload. He just wants him to hear his story.
Yeah.
And then he says, you're right, we made the app too addictive, and he says, like, we shouldn't have. And then he says, no, shut up. I don't care what the fuck you do. Okay, I don't care if you cancel the app or if you keep it or if you do high fives. I don't give a shit. I just want to say my piece. And then that's when he reveals, like, he's going to kill himself, because this was basically his suicide note. He wanted to tell his story to the CEO of Smithereens and then kill himself. That was his plan the entire time. And at this point, ironically, the guy he kidnapped is now sympathizing with him. He's not even upset about being kidnapped or the whole ordeal. He's sympathizing with them. And Billy Bauer starts saying, you can't kill yourself. And then this in turn he kidnapped is like, no, you don't have to kill yourself. This doesn't have to be the end of it. And he's pretty insistent. He's like, no, I'm gonna do it. You can leave. You're free. Go be free. And then that's when, like, he starts to move, like he's gonna get out of the car. And then he's like, oh, the child locks are on, right? And then he's like, oh. So he goes to, like, turn off the child lock, and that's when the intern makes a move for his gun, grabs his gun, and then they start struggling. And this whole time, the entire time, actually, the police had a sniper looking for a clear shot that they couldn't get the entire time, because the entire time the intern was sitting right behind him in the car. So as they're struggling, the sniper reports that they got a clear shot, and the sniper takes the shot and it misses, and then they take a second shot and it hits, but we don't know the outcome because they don't show the outcome of the second shot, just that something happened.
You just see some people's faces. So I think you see mostly people looking kind of upset, which tells me that at least one of them died.
Yeah.
That it's left up to, is it just him? Is it the passenger, the kidnapping victim? Is it both of them? You don't know. Like, it's kind of kept vague.
Right, it's kind of kept vague, which I don't know if I agree with that for an ending.
It's very British.
Yeah, it's very British. Other than that, I thought it was just fantastic. Like, the whole thing was tense. You really did get to sympathize with the main character. At first, he comes across as like a weirdo. You don't know like what his deal is. Also, that made it very tense for the. Also, I when I started the episode, I thought that was a weakness, not knowing much about this guy or his motivations. And then like I realized as the episode that was actually a strength, because it made it more tense, because since you didn't know much about what this guy was about, you didn't know what the hell he was liable to do at any moment in the episode. And slowly throughout the standoff, the layers are peeled back to where you get to understand who this guy is and what he's about. The layers are peeled back through either the police or Smithereens finding out information about him and presenting it, or like even through like that very heart-wrenching conversation he had with Topher Grace. Which Topher Grace was great, by the way. I totally expected him to be like some asshole, like CEO, but he ended up being like an actual compassionate person, which I don't think of when I think of people like Mark Zuckerberg. So I don't think Mark Zuckerberg would have.
You mean Data from Star Trek? Next Generation?
Yes, yeah, exactly. I don't think Mark Zuckerberg would have handled that situation the same way. I'm just saying.
He would have been like, but I'm telling you not to kill yourself and that it's not your fault. Why are you still wanting to kill yourself? Does not compute. Does not compute.
Does not compute. Yeah, I thought so everything worked. Everything gelled in the end. And I just thought, man, that was great television. I just thought, man, that was fantastically done.
See, to me, this was the weakest of the three. And the main reason why is because...
Not science fiction enough.
That's part of it. But the bigger part is that, like it was with this director, the guy that directed this episode previously directed Hated in the Nation, which was, I think you and I both agreed, was the worst episode of all the Black Mirror episodes.
Yeah, that one was terrible.
But like that, this is too close to other things I've seen on TV, like where Hated in the Nation was too close to a police procedural, that it was just boring. It was just like,
Hated in the Nation was like a police procedural that somehow ended up with killer robot bees. I still don't understand that. But
this one was like it would be a police procedural, but it would be a police procedural with a specific standoff episode with a hostage negotiator and stuff. It was too close to that. There were, of course, differences. They did have a great actor with Andrew Scott, really conveying those emotions.
The performances really made it.
But it's often tread territory.
Yeah, I get that. I get that it might have felt too familiar, but this is one of the things where characterization and performance really brings it over the finish line versus being like ho hum. Because initially I was upset because I thought they were doing a poor job of characterization because they weren't really really fleshing this guy out at the beginning, but then once you realize why they did it, because it made things, not really knowing what this guy was about, made things all the more tense than if they had stated up front that he was suicidal and he had a fiance. If they info dumped all that shit at the beginning of the episode, then it would not have been tense. It would have been a bad episode.
Let's move on then to the last episode of Black Mirror, or the first for you.
Yeah, the first one I watched of the season.
Rachel Jack and Ashley too, most known for starring Miley Cyrus. This episode was directed by Anne Sawitsky, who's relatively unknown. She did a movie, I think, called Happy Happy, and as like the others, was written by Charlie Brooker. So what were your general thoughts on this one? You chose to watch this one first.
I can't get that song out of my head on a roll. That shit is, I thought I'd hate it, but that shit is popping.
It's like as if there's a great song that it reminds you of.
Yeah, just vaguely. It's like, damn, I don't know. They gotta put that out as a single.
I think they did, actually. On a Roll, the main song of this, for those who don't know, is actually a rewrite cover. So it's a cover that's had then the lyrics changed for Head Like a Hole by Nine Inch Nails.
Not just the lyrics, but the tempo and stuff. They made
it like a pop song.
Yeah, they turned it into a pop song, which at first you'd be like, that's sacrilegious. Oh my God, why would they defile Nine Inch Nails? But they do it for a very specific purpose. There's a messaging behind that, and that's because On a Roll is a cynical and fake pop song, and it's designed to come off as a cynical and fake pop song because we find out Miley Cyrus's character is a pop star, and we find out that she is kind of being forced to write these vapid pop songs because that's what makes money. Her manager, who is also her aunt, is kind of forcing her into this mold, and her character is trying to break out of that mold and become a more serious artist.
There's kind of a tie to 15 Million Merits, which was my favorite episode of Black Mirror. In 15 Million Merits, they had this whole part where this guy was trying to convince, this reality show host was trying to convince this girl to be a porn star when she had auditioned to be a singer.
Right,
and
exactly.
He's talking about, don't bother feeling shame and stuff. We can medicate against that. And that's exactly what's happening here. They have her on a cocktail of medications that make her compliant.
Yeah, that make her compliant. The entire time she is documenting this stuff and trying to find a way out of her contract with her aunt so that she can do the things that she wants to do. She no longer wants to be this pop star. She doesn't want to be Ashley O anymore. And so On a Roll is symbolic of that persona, the Ashley O persona. And at the end of the episode, when she breaks free of that persona, she changes it to Head Like a Hole, like the actual song.
Yeah.
She changes it at the end. And that's supposed to be emblematic of she's free of that persona. This is the real her. You know, this is what she wants to be doing.
So I copied down some of the lyrics from each one, and like I'm not going to go over all of them, but just kind of like to point out for those that aren't very well versed in Nine Inch Nails, Head Like a Hole is kind of like a very anti-capitalistic song. It's very like against that.
Right.
And of course,
and it should be pointed out Trent Reznor signed off on this version of the song. So it's not like they did it without him.
Ashley O, as a character in this, as she's presented, not as her real self, but as this presented version of herself, the pop star version, is like the opposite of that. She's very consumeristic. She's very about like, you know, creating a pop standard or something. And so like, for example, the lyrics for the verse of Head Like a Hole go, God money, I'll do anything for you. God money, just tell me what you want me to. God money, nail me up against the wall. God money, don't want everything, he wants it all.
Right.
And then they changed that to, this is the lyrics, oh honey, I'll do anything for you. Oh honey, just tell me what you want me to. Oh honey, kiss me up against the wall. Oh honey, don't think anything, just have it all.
Right, yeah, exactly.
So they just like consumer and Popeyes Head Like a Hole right there.
It's an inversion of the song and everything it's about, but, you know, and that's the whole messaging. I thought that was brilliant, but the rest of the episode doesn't really seem to have a point to it. I couldn't suss out like a point. This
is comparable to Striking Vipers, which you didn't like, in that I agree, it doesn't have like a meaning, like a lesson.
It plays out like Black Mirror's trying to do a fairy tale. It's got the fairy tale elements. You have the princess, you have the sleeping princess who's in a coma, you have the wicked stepmother, and then you have some kids and a magical being who kind of wake the princess up. There's no prince in this. But
that's a good way of looking at it. You know what the comparison I made is actually probably a format based on fairy tales as well, and that's why it reminded me of it. But to me, it reminded me of like YA, like movies from the 90s.
Right.
Like Josh and Sam, if you've ever seen that, you know, or like these kind of ones where it's like some kids and they go on the run because they have, you know, adults are doing something that the kids don't feel comfortable with, and so they go on the run, and it's the idea of like kids in this adult world doing their own thing because they have to get by kind of thing. It's very YA 1990s, like late 90s.
Yes.
And that's what I drew a comparison to more. The fairy tale comparison you're drawing is very apt. And it just makes me go like, well, yeah, but those YA shows from the 90s were basically trying to be fairy tales too. So
right.
That's why, you know? Because of that aspect, I actually kind of enjoyed the episode a lot more than I thought I would. I am not a fan of Hannah Montana. I am not a fan of Miley Cyrus outside of Hannah Montana.
I would state up front. I'm not a Miley Cyrus fan. I'm not a Hannah Montana fan. You know, but I enjoyed this episode to a degree.
It was like a fun little adventure.
Yeah, it was a fun little adventure. It wasn't really Black Mirror to me. You know, there's a lot I can criticize. You know, why they download her entire consciousness to a mass market doll. That seems excessive. They put a blocker in it, but why is it defeated by just like hooking her up to a computer and tapping a few keys on a keyboard?
It's oftentimes too goofy, you know.
Yeah,
like
it's oftentimes too goofy.
I agree with all that. That's to me, like Striking Vipers, again, you know, doesn't really have a message to it.
Right.
But this one is like, whereas I thought Striking Vipers was kind of like not necessarily a message, but like you know, kind of a trans tragic love story or something. Whereas I see this as kind of like a late 90s adventure movie.
Right.
You know?
So on a scale between Striking Vipers, thanks, I hate it, to Smithereens, like I loved it, I would say this is in the middle. This is like a 70%.
I I don't know. Yeah, I'd say I like to use tiers. I like to say that I think all three of these episodes are mid-tier Black Mirror episodes. So it's funny because people were reacting so negatively to this season of Black Mirror Online. I was really dreading watching it. And honestly, I think this is better than the last two seasons of Black Mirror. Like, I don't think we got, like, I think in the last two seasons we got maybe across both seasons, we got between like 2 and 3 great episodes, and the rest were pretty much garbage, I thought. Like, very few fell in the mid-tier category. Most of them were either garbage or they were like great. Or not even great necessarily, but really good.
Last season, I think like the dating app episode.
Yeah, the Star Trek episode.
Oh, that was last season, was it?
Yeah. Was it Crocodile was last season too, I think. No. That was the one with the woman that kept killing people.
The one about the evil robot dogs.
Yeah, that was last season. And that was a beautifully shot.
That was a beautifully shot, yeah.
That was a really cool episode. Just didn't really seem to have much of a point to it.
No, other than it was like...
It was just a horror movie. It was just a horror short.
Yeah, it was just a horror movie.
Yeah, so I'd say this is like a mid-tier Black Mirror episode. It's not hating all of these episodes were. Like, none of them are hated in the nation bad. No. You know? And none of them are like White Christmas or 15 Million Merits good.
Right, exactly. None of these were an all-time great. Even my favorite episode of the season, Smithereens, isn't an all-time great Black Mirror episode. You know, like...
I think that's what it comes down to, though, is that people now, if it's not the greatest thing they've ever seen, it's like, meh, this isn't worth watching.
Yeah, but like, when I say I love Smithereens, I'm comparing it to the other episodes in the season. I'm not even thinking about other seasons. I'm not comparing it to the entirety of Black Mirror, because A, I don't feel like doing that. I don't feel like sitting here doing a ranking of everything, and B, like, the discussion is about this season of Black Mirror, so.
Yeah, it's like, I'm just saying that I think that people that reacted very negatively about this online, it goes to like a current trend, which is just the idea that like, if something isn't perfect, it's not worth watching or something, you know?
Right, exactly.
And it's kind of ridiculous.
And I can see the gulfs in the middle where something has entertainment value, but isn't perfect, isn't the best.
Something can be worth watching without blowing you away.
Right, exactly.
And that's kind of where all three of these land. Like, I enjoyed all three of these episodes, but none of them blew me away.
Right.
That's kind of the main point I can make. Like, there are episodes of Black Mirror that definitely blew me away. None of them from this season.
wasn't a great season.
Not a great season, but not a bad season either. Just a season.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, this isn't, I'm not gonna like look back on these episodes with fond memories like in 10 years, you know? Like the way I'll look back on 15 Million Merits.
No, I don't think I'm gonna want to go back and rewatch any of these, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, I don't go back and rewatch TV really at all.
No, I don't either. There's too much time. There's too much coming out all the time now for that to even be like worthwhile, unless it's like, okay, well, like maybe like sitcoms, like random episodes of sitcoms.
That's very mood determined, you know, like with sitcoms, that's like what they call like waterfall TV. That's like even the kind of stuff like I wouldn't look up old episodes of sitcoms like on Netflix or something. I wouldn't go like, I'm going to watch an old sitcom episode, but I might channel surf till I find one. You know what I mean?
I'll be like, I want to watch a random episode of The Office or a random episode of It's Always Sunny. You know, it's nice because they're only 30 minutes. So, and you know, there's not, you know, usually not any like super deep, long running storyline that you have to follow to just laugh at something for 30 minutes. So it makes it easily digestible.
To me, that would be like maybe like Married with Children.
Yeah.
Where Married with Children is playing on like 5 different networks all the time. So like if I'm up at like 4 a.m. and I'm bored, I might flip to a channel and find an episode of Married with Children and just watch it because I'm in the mood for that. You know, I don't really want to think. I don't want to watch something new. I don't really want to pay a lot of attention. I'm not in the mood to do anything else. So might as well just like lay back and enjoy something old, you know? And that's kind of the stuff that I would rewatch now as well. Yeah. But for the most part, I don't really rewatch stuff anything that's like really good, even if it is really good, just because who has the time? You know, I have other things on my backlog to watch.
Exactly. Same.
Yeah. So that's kind of, that's what it's like for that. But that being said, we are going to be doing a rewatch of Lost next year. So to me, that's different though, because Lost is like to me, that's my top show of all time. And we're doing it also with the idea of discussing it on the show. So that's a little different too. So that's basically Black Mirror season 5. Well, I think they're season 6. They're already talked about, they have some ideas, but we just don't know when it's coming. This actually came sooner than I thought, because when Bandersnatch came out, Charlie Brooker was talking about how Bandersnatch took so long to work out because there were so many different paths that they were saying, like, it's gonna hold off Black Mirror for a while, but it wasn't that long. Like, Black Mirror actually came quicker than I would have thought. When so many shows go off the air for like 2-3 years now before coming back, like, the time that between Bandersnatch and this season of Black Mirror wasn't that big.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't that long.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about our last show here, which is not Black Mirror. It's Legion, season 3, episode 1, also titled Chapter 20. This is directed by Andrew Stanton, who did WALL-E, the movie WALL-E he directed. Also, he directed the episodes of Stranger Things, The Spy, and Dig Dug. Those are from season 2 of Stranger Things. And this was written by Nathaniel Halpern and Noah Hawley together. So Nathaniel Halpern has worked on Legion before and on past episodes, and he also wrote for Outcast. So that's this episode. This episode, it was interesting. It didn't focus on any of the characters primarily. It focused on an entirely new character that we haven't seen before.
Yeah, this episode introduces a new character and
Nintendo Switch.
It's actually
a weird product placement, but
it's a weird product placement. It's actually really cool because it's really cool because we get to pick up where the new state of things. We find out like things have changed drastically since the last episode of last season, but we get to find that out through completely fresh eyes,
mm-hmm.
through the perspective of this character who doesn't really know who anybody is and gets drawn into this world.
Yes, this character is a time traveling mutant.
Yes,
and we knew from the previews going into this season that a time traveler was going to be a big part of it. It's just interesting that they did it from her perspective this whole episode to introduce her to what's going on.
So basically, David lures this time traveler into his service by dropping clues for her to follow, right? The pregnant virgin, and then follow the yellow bus. There's all these clues as she's following these breadcrumbs.
Mm-hmm.
And it's basically David is leaving these breadcrumbs for her. And again, this is Legion. Everything is psychic. Everything is like an acid trip. Like, you don't really know what's going on.
He's gone full cult now, though.
Yeah, he's gone full cult.
This is full, 70s sex cult.
Yeah, it's a full 70s sex cult. It's really cool. So, yeah, he's got this cult now, and he brings her in. And the version of David she meets, like, he doesn't even know that he's hired, that he's hired a time traveler, And at first she doesn't really know why she's there or why he wants her there. He's not sure because she is meeting David in a time before David dropped these clues, apparently. But we find out pretty quickly because as soon as she meets David, a task force swoops in and they murder him. Well, his ex-girlfriend actually pulls the kill.
Yeah, murders David, the gunshot
from behind, the one that he didn't anticipate.
The female Carrie cuts off his arm. There's it's just they just full on raid to kill him.
Yeah, full on raid from all of his former friends, his dear former friends who are now trying to kill his ass.
Yeah, and they're of course joined by Amal Farouk, who is the previous villain of the first 3 seasons.
Yeah, so this is interesting. So it's a complete role reversal now where Amal Farouk is working with the group to take out David instead of the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently now David's the bad guy.
Yeah, we got that twist last season. I don't think either of us were too keen on it.
Yeah, we weren't too keen on it, but that's the direction they're going. Even though we see things initially from David's perspective, through this time traveler's perspective, we get David doesn't perceive himself as a bad guy.
Yeah, he still doesn't. He's not all of a sudden mustache girl. Speaking of mustaches.
Yes! Why do I have a mustache?
Autonomy Wallace returns in this episode. He's brought back in the machine of a body. We last saw him. He was had become part of this mainframe, and so now his mainframe altered version of him is in a robotic body, and he's been given a mustache. Why? Because the Vermilion robots all have mustaches.
Exactly, because all the robots seem to have mustaches. So why not?
So no, it's not that they have to. It's just that Carrie was like, the male Carrie's explanation was, well, they all had mustaches. Like, he just didn't seem to understand why it wouldn't be.
That was pretty funny. Yeah. So Tanami is now an android, apparently.
Yeah.
And basically what happens after David is killed the first time, the time traveler, she goes back in time an hour to prevent it. You know, and this whole time she's listening to like this tape that's like
fundamentals of time travel.
The fundamentals of time travel, like this guy like basically going over like these rules for time travel. And there's all kinds of little rules. One of the important ones that I get is like you have to be careful how far back you go, because like there's a demon apparently in the time stream who will fuck time travelers up if they try to go back too far.
It's kind of like her own version of Amal Farouk.
Yeah, kind of her own version of Amal Farouk.
Where like David, the deeper he dived into his mind, the closer he came to Amal Farouk in his mind.
Yes.
Where in this, that's the more she uses her time travel ability, the closer she comes to being discovered by this demon trapped in the time stream or whatever.
Yeah. It's not really explained what it is, but it's cool though how they show her power. Like she draws like a door and then she goes through it and then she ends up in like this hallway with like all these different doors labeled like 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour.
Like this weird like spiral hallway.
Yeah.
It just goes on and on.
It just goes on and on. And she's trying to decide how far back she should go, and then she looks and she sees this pair of eyes in the darkness, this pair of inhuman eyes, and she knows not to go that far.
Mm-hmm.
And initially she picks 1 hour from when it happens. And she goes back and she manages to warn David and they start moving out. But even though she got David to move and he's not killed in that moment, he still ends up dead the exact same way.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing changes.
It's interesting because the episode actually plays kind of like a Groundhog's Day episode.
It is, yeah, it is similar to a Groundhog's Day episode, yeah.
It's funny because they even use, like, a big hallmark of a Groundhog's Day episode is that you have these cues that you can repeat over and over again to kind of show, like, oh, this is around where they are in the story, you know? I mean, in Groundhog Day itself, they had, like, the guy that stepped in the puddle, you know, like, or he'd step in the puddle and the guy made the corny joke or something about, you know, the life insurance salesman.
And this one, it's the guy in front of the compound drinking his tea, and then the big cane like pulling him away, and the
his
tea
glass like, spinning in the air,
spinning in the air,
very like Warner Brothers, like not Looney Tunes. What's the air one? Hanna-Barbera cartoon or something.
That was a gag in Looney Tunes.
Like I was saying, like both of those, like that style of old cartoon like gag. But yeah, just like they literally used like a giant hook on a
they literally use a giant hook, which is like so impractical, but it's hilarious.
It's so funny because like the first time you just see it, and it's like, what the hell? And then
you're like, what the fuck? Yeah.
The next time you see their perspective as they're invading, and the guy's like, you know, like get him with the hook or something.
Yeah, get him with the hook.
And it's so funny because they're talking about it so tactically.
Yeah. Like this is their tactic. Get him with the hook, and then drop the anvil. Yeah, it's so funny. But it's great because like, so he dies again and then she decides to go back in time again. She's trying to pick an earlier spot, but she ends up running into Amal Farouk in the time stream, and he pulls her out of the time stream into the astral plane where he has a conversation with her, you know, trying to figure out who she is and what she's doing or what she's trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
And he basically figures her out immediately.
But even though he's not able to hold on to her, she slips away.
Yes, he tries to hold on to her, but she manages to create a door and slip away.
And so now she's warned David, she's gotten David to early enough that he gets out of there, leaving poor Squirrel behind. But gets out of there, like teleports his whole compound away, leaving a giant hole in the ground. But Amal Farouk is aware. Like, even though this is a new loop, he goes into this new loop, like, aware of his time in the previous loop, which doesn't make sense in a linear fashion, because he's not a time traveler. But he explains it as that there's a connection between the astral chain and time. Yeah,
there's a connection between the timeline and the astral plane, and that when he's in the astral plane, he's outside of time, essentially.
Yeah.
So that lets him escape the loop, and lets him re-enter the time timeline with knowledge of what was happening.
Mm-hmm.
Again, Amal Farouk is also very powerful, so, you know.
Yeah, you know, all this episode has done for me is to make me continue to like David, even though he's flawed.
Yes.
And make me dislike his colleagues more and more.
Yeah.
And it's funny because, you know, technically I guess he's supposed to destroy the world, so that's why they're trying to kill him.
Yeah, they're trying to kill him because he's supposed to end the world, apparently. Like, he's the monster that ends the world that they've been talking about.
Yeah, but I can't help but identify with him more than with the other people. Because he's more emotional. Like, Sid killed him in such a cold way, whereas David's, like, still ruled by his emotions.
Well, we see that, like, too, because there's a conversation between Sid and Amal Farouk, where Sid's just really cold about the whole thing with, you know, Amal Farouk is talking with Sid about David, and Sid is so cold. She's like, I don't care about him. You know, David wasn't my first boyfriend. He won't be my last. You know, it was a thing that basically means nothing to me, you know. Mm-hmm. And Amal Farouk says something about, you know, like says to her, you know, she loved David, and that emotion doesn't just go away. It gets transmuted into something else.
It's funny because all of David's friends seem to be pretty cold. I mean, female Carrie just straight up, like, was trying to butcher him, like, cut off his arm just without any thought. So, in fact, any expression she did give was more just like a scowl of disdain for him. And it makes it hard to relate to them because they give evidence for why David's in the wrong. Not just that he's going to destroy the world, but the whole like rape thing that they alluded to in the second season at the end and stuff. It's like, yeah, you can look at that and you can really hold that against David. But David's still more relatable because he's ruled by emotions, whereas everybody else is so cold.
I think the only person whose feelings or emotions haven't changed is Amal Farouk. You know? Yeah.
And he doesn't care if anybody lives or dies.
No, he doesn't. Yeah, he doesn't care if anybody lives or dies. You know, it was a good episode. I do like this new character they introduced, you know, into this craziness. Re-entering this world through the perspective of a new character was brilliant because you got to see, like, all these events from a fresh set of eyes.
Mm-hmm. And they continued to up the game on the weird without being as dark. Like, we talked about Looney Tunes of the thing, but there was a lot of, like, Looney Tunes-esque stuff going on in this.
Yeah, despite the subject matter, this was actually a very lighthearted episode.
Yeah, like what's with the airplane they're flying in?
Yeah, exactly.
That's straight out of a Hanna-Barbera cartoon.
That's straight out of a Hanna-Barbera cartoon. We had Lenny at the beginning. The first significant person she runs into, our time traveler, is Lenny. And the first thing is Lenny sits down. Lenny says, and Lenny asks her like if she plays for both teams or something, and she says, "No, I like boys." And Lenny just like pouts and goes, "Why?"
She just like checks out of any reason for this. She's like, I'm bored now.
Yeah, I'm bored now.
Yeah, they did a lot to like make this funny, which was cool. And you know, it reminds me of what I really liked about Legion. Because going into the season, I was excited about it, but I was also kind of apprehensive because I really didn't like the way the second season left.
Right.
But this is kind of reminding me about why Legion is great. That it's just so weird and just it just revels in its oddity.
Yeah, it just revels in its oddity. And I knew the David heel turn was coming because the character is literally a villain in the Marvel comics.
Isn't he kind of like an anti-hero / villain? He's both.
He's not like a straight mustache twirling villain. Like the reason is like he's so powerful and he's a schizophrenic. So that makes him unpredictable and dangerous, which is really the conceit behind the character. So it's not like he's a mustache twirling, I want to end the world just because I'm evil, ha ha ha. Like,
yeah.
So, but I knew like that was coming, you know, that twist with David was coming because that's literally the character.
I just didn't like the way they handled it. I didn't like the way they just made it cold, like he's all in the wrong. I think it would have been far more interesting if they all still liked David, but they had to kill him.
Right.
Like that they're on this mission to kill him because they have to, because he's going to destroy the world, but they don't want to, you know, like I think that would be more interesting and more right for some, but like everybody just completely turned on him. And it's like, and they created that, the rape excuse on it is such like once we use this word, we can't back away from it now he's just horrible in every way. And it's like, it didn't feel really earned to me.
Right.
Like I don't think they really did a good job of establishing that as the case. And then like it ends up just feeling like a miscommunication with some problems, maybe something where he deserves to be punished in some sense, but like instead it just goes straight, like right off the end against them. I don't know. I just didn't like it. I didn't think it felt earned.
Right. I agree, but I thought this was a great start to the new season. Hopefully it keeps up with this level of quality.
Yes.
Because I really enjoyed this episode. I thought it was great.
Yeah, season 2 also in other places dragged at points.
It did.
So I'm really hoping season 3 is more kind of adventurous and fun and weird and whimsical in all the right ways, you know? And it doesn't have to be as dark, because the second season was very dark and like a mostly not fun way, you know?
Right, exactly.
So this, even if David's the villain now or something, at least kind of have fun with it, with him just kind of being this cult leader, basically, sex cult leader. And,
yeah,
you know, explore that, have fun with that, like how ridiculous that is, you know, really play with that. That would be more fun. So that's what I'm hoping for from this. I believe this is the last season, right?
Yeah, this is officially the last season.
So yeah, so I'm hoping they really go out kind of more fun than season 2 ended up being.
Same.
But we'll have to see where it goes. There's lots to look forward to. And now that time travel's under the equation, it's, you know, you can go all sorts of wacky.
It's going to be, all sorts of, it's going to to be crazy. Or hopefully it'll be crazy. It's already crazy. It's one episode in, it's already nuts. So
it's already met the crazy quota that most shows get in their entire run.
Exactly.
All right, but that's it. So next week we're going to be talking about Legion Season 3 Episode 2, Chapter 21. That gets confusing with the episode titles. But that's what we're going to be talking about next week. We also might or might not be, depending on the progress we each make, be talking about Jessica Jones. If we don't talk about that next week, we'll talk about that the week after. But I think we're going for next week. Have you started it yet?
I have started it. I'm 2 episodes in.
Okay. So we might or might not. We'll see where we end up. We'll do it in the next 2 weeks, regardless. But hopefully next week. We'll see. But until then, here's what's coming up in the next week. So we're recording this on Saturday, June 29th. But on the 28th, on Friday, 7 Seed, the new anime series, came to Netflix, as did The Chosen One, Family Business, and Paquita Salas. All Netflix. Friday is like Netflix night. They don't exclusively release new stuff on Fridays, but they always release stuff on Fridays.
Netflix night.
Yeah. Which is funny because Friday used to be like the death time slot for any like TV show. Like if a TV show was airing on a Friday, it was like, oh, you're just putting it out to die.
Right, exactly.
It's kind of funny that like that's when Netflix puts out all their stuff pretty much. Then on Sunday, June 30th, Instinct comes back to CBS. The Loudest Voice, a new miniseries, airs on Showtime. So it's about like Rupert Murdoch and Roger Ailes and the start of Fox News. And it's probably a very negative take on it because it's on Showtime, which is pretty liberal. So it's not going to be glorifying Fox News is what I'm saying. Also on Sunday, June 30th, The Rook comes to Stars. This is the first of the shows from the next Game of Thrones specials we did, those 4 episodes. This is the first show from those list of shows that's starting up. And you know what? My anticipation, my hype for it has pretty much died. I read an article from somebody who watched like the first couple episodes, I think, a reviewer, and it sounds like they basically took everything that was cool about the book and removed it.
That sucks.
And homogenized it. So I'm still gonna watch it because I'm even if it's not the same as the book, that doesn't mean it's not good. But I'm just really like all the excitement was based on how much I liked the book. And now that that's gone, I'm kind of like, I guess I'll watch it now. Also coming on that day on Sunday, June 30th is What Just Happened. Have you heard about this show at all?
Nope.
What Just Happened is like an after show for a show that doesn't exist.
It's Fred Savage.
Yes.
So Fred Savage, it's basically making fun of Talking Dead and all these after shows that AMC basically started.
Yes.
And Fred Savage is basically about some fictional science fiction fantasy show, and then Fred Savage is basically Chris Hardwick having celebrities and people involved with the show on it to explain what just happened. And it's a comedy. It's a satirical take on that.
I'm looking forward to this. I think it looks really funny.
Yeah. I think Fred Savage is hilarious. It's just a shame though that he happens to do like these projects that are hilarious, but they're always like short-lived for whatever reason.
Yeah, but hey, they still exist. You still can watch what was made.
Sure.
Then on Monday, July 1st, 2019, the beginning of the next month, Divorce comes to HBO, returns to HBO, I should say, and Designated Survivor 60 Days comes to Netflix. Now, this isn't the show, the regular show Designated Survivor. This is the South Korean remake of Designated Survivor.
Oh, weird. Okay.
So you know how like you have the American office and the British office? Well, Netflix bought Designated Survivor. They own the rights to it now. So Netflix, being an international business, said, well, let's just make different versions of Designated Survivor. We'll air them in those countries, but then we can just air them in, every country because we're Netflix and we own the full rights. So that's what we're getting. We're getting South Korean Designated Survivor. So that's kind of funny. On Tuesday, July 2nd, 2019, Young Justice Outsiders finally comes to DC Universe. I know that a lot of people weren't too keen on the Titans TV series that DC Universe launched with. A lot of people seem to like Doom Patrol.
Yeah.
And Swamp Thing was canceled early, but people seem to like that as well. But Young Justice was the one that a lot of people were really waiting for. And so now, here it is. Also, Bangkok Love Stories, Objects of Affection, and Bangkok Love Stories, Plead, both come to Netflix on that day as well. And then lastly, on Thursday, July 4th, Stranger Things 3 comes to Netflix.
A big one.
That's the big one. So yeah, that's the fireworks on this list. Let's hope that it doesn't have any horrible one-off episodes. But that's it. You can reach me on Twitter. I'm at Tyson Gifford. You can reach Will. He is at Vox the Hero. You can check out our Facebook page and our YouTube channel as well as our site, thetotalscreen.com. You can subscribe to this podcast through any major podcast client like iTunes or Pocket Cast. And the entire backlog of our podcast is available on our YouTube channel. So check all of that out. All of the links you can find on thetotalscreen.com. Check that out. Thank you everybody for listening. Good night.
Good night.
If you would like to reach out to us and make a comment, send an email to contact@thetotalscreen.com. Stay tuned to The Total Screen for the very best in genre television.